CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.
Hey, our next guest is there.
Yes.
Shall we go to him?
I'm looking forward to speaking to our next guest, Hamish Marr, joining us on the line from sunny Methven. Hamish.
Yes, hi everyone.
How are you? Now I see some pictures talking about social media of you in a very comfortable position on a couple of couches at David Burkett's place with your socks on and a cup of tea yesterday. What were you up to?
Oh, well, a handful of us. Well, good morning, everyone, actually. You two. It's good to see you online. Andy and Sarah, you look good all working together. That's good. We had a meeting of the minds within the arable industry with some of the ag MPs from the coalition last week just to discuss what's going on in the arable sector. So that's why you saw me there.
Yes.
Nice to have you on the line, Hamish. We did try and get you actually in here in studio, but we will do that. That kind of didn't quite work. But on that, why? Why do you need to have a meeting as arable farmers? What's the concerns that you guys were airing to the coalition ag people, ag ministers, spokespeople?
Well, there's probably two things, and bear in mind I'm not on Federated Farmers or anything like that anymore, but there's two things I think that are relevant. And the first one is that the arable sector really, without trying to put rose-tinted glasses or the opposite of that on, the arable sector is on its knees. You will have all read about Watties and McCain's falling over. We've had two pretty poor harvests. Well, actually, the last 4 out of 5 in Canterbury have been pretty average. Profitability on farm is at an all-time low. So we wanted to update the RMPs and representatives on that, the key drivers for those things. But also, in amongst all that, the arable sector really hasn't got any advocacy in Wellington. Federated Farmers do some of it. But the arable sector of Federated Farmers is only one part of quite a big group. There is actually no one advocating for the arable sector to our MPs. So every now and again, a handful of us get together and just chew the fat and go through what some of the issues are. So that was the reason that we caught up the other day.
Is it about time that there is better representation of the arable sector in Wellington, Hamish, and it fits around what their mandate of FAR really is and isn't, is a big question?
Yes, well, that's a good question and something I have been pushing for a little while. But as it stands at the moment, the mandate of FAR, or the Foundation for Arable Research, is strictly applied research and development to growers. So the advocacy piece of FAR is outside of their constitution, so that would have to change. But in a nutshell, yes, that is something that if the farmers felt that was required, that is something that FAR potentially could take on.
What does it take for that to happen, Hamish?
I don't 100% know, but I think that it is the next time we vote on the levy, and FAR is a levy organisation, so under the Commodity Levies Act, I think it's every 3 years we've got to vote for that. We would have to change the constitution, farmers would have to vote, and we would go from there.
It's an interesting one though, but you look at Dairy NZ and beef and lamb, how much they got pulled over the coals by their their levy payers for getting heavily into advocacy and away from research and extension around Hawaka, Ikanoa. So it's a real balancing act around the role of the commodity levy.
Yeah, well, that's 100% true. And I think having been spent a bit of time in Wellington understanding diplomacy and advocacy a little bit more than I did before I was agricultural trade envoy, sometimes the gap between what the farmers see and what the farmers think is what's going on and what is going on in the marketplace and with our in Wellington is two totally different things. And the fact that they did get in a bit of trouble means that actually the middle ground is probably somewhere there or thereabouts.
Yes.
To me, it's all about the messaging.
Hamish, coming back to your meeting with the Coalition Ag spokespeople, and you said at the start of the interview that arable was on its knees. what were the discussions about? Chatham House rules, you know, if there's stuff you can't talk about, but what sort of things were you talking about? What can help the arable sector?
Well, I mean, at a very high level, and the reason that arable on its knees is that inflation on farm has outstripped the pace of inflation of our sales. So, you know, 20 years ago, we were getting $400 for wheat. Well, we're still getting $400 for wheat today. Now, there's been times we've had 600, but in amongst all that, there's been times we've had 300. But over the course of time, the cost of fertiliser, fuel, chemicals, labour, machinery has all gone like that, and the price of our product has really is like this. So that is what's driving it, and that's the discussion we had. What the politicians can do about that. They can do things in the regulatory space to make options on farm simpler. At the moment, we're locked into, if you're an arable farmer, you're an arable farmer, and this is what you can do. So, you know, some of the work they're doing in the Resource Management Act, for example, might help that.
It's interesting, though, because realistically, if we were putting our free market hat on, Hamish, you'd have to look seriously at the commercial structure of the arable industry to take some responsibility of those contracts and pricing and how the arable sector's commercial nature works, which is uniquely different to some of the other commodities and land use, and it is responsible for the growers being on their knees to some degree.
Totally. There's things like, you know, we grow all these wonderful new grasses that produce all this lovely feed for everyone else, but actually the farmer has got no rights to those grasses and the IP that goes into all those. So we grow all that stuff, but we've got no rights to the progeny of what we produce. And we're negotiating quite often 18 months before we get paid. A lot of things change. So as a result of all of that, federated farmers and the grain and seed trade and a few other farmers and whatnot are really seriously looking at the state of the industry, because Sarah, you did right. The way we're operating up until now probably has worked, but it's the slow creep of it, not of the bits that don't work, have caught up with us, and those are the things that we're hoping to change.
One of the other problems would be, though, as well, Hamish, is that unlike other parts of the New Zealand ag sector, a large portion of your product is actually imported into New Zealand, right? When we're talking about milling grain and all sorts of things. So it's not like you can export it or demand that price. You've just got to take it. That is a major problem. Is that, I mean, geez, we don't want to talk about protectionism in any way, shape or form, but it is complicated, isn't it? Very complex.
It's very complicated, and what, you know, we can't just say, oh, it's the wheat, or it's the palm kernel, or it's the multiplication market of seed, it's the vegetable seed, it's the big companies. It's very, very, very complicated, and what complicates it even more is that you know, we've got a farm that has 20 or 30 or 40 fields in it that we have to fill up, and so you're under time pressure to get these fields or paddocks filled up with something to grow, and so it all just rolls on. It's very complicated.
It kind of comes down to that same food security discussion. So what really I cannot get my head around, but, you know, dare I say it, dairy farmers are short-term thinkers in a lot of ways. No, but if you think about it, right, you've got no arable sector in New Zealand, and Aussie has 3 years of drought. The price of their grain goes through the roof. We're not doing actually anything for animal feed protection and security in this country either. And yes, it's cheaper to send grain from Australia to the North Island than the South to the North, and all of the logistics. But at some point, don't we need to take some responsibility for our animal feed security in this country?
Yeah, I would have thought, and I don't know what the answer to that is. We can't just magically put a bridge across Cook Strait and make the price of freight, you know, half of what it is. We can't do all of those things. But what we can do is seriously look at the fixed costs of being in business in New Zealand. And I'm thinking about the Watties and the McCains and whatnot. You know, the price of energy in this country, we're a country of water, we're a country of hydroelectricity, and yet we've got some of the highest energy costs around. Why is that? You know, those are the things that put the fixed costs of production up and make us less and less competitive all the time?
That is a really, really good question, and I've been thinking about that, and I just don't understand.
Tane Randall's got the solution.
Has he?
Yeah, he wants to put 16 new power plants in.
Well, when you look at, sorry, I'm going to go off track here, but when you look at the amount of hassle it was for the West Coast to put in the Waidaha scheme, which is a run of river, and then 6 kayakers jump up and down, and then a few greenies jump up and down, and we're talking about power security for the entire for a large portion of the West Coast, and you go through it. There's no wonder it's a nightmare with that sort of nonsense, but at least with Fast Track, it's making difference. Hey, Hamish, we've seen some significant changes in Canterbury, arable, farmers moving to dairy. That's an unavoidable, I suppose, conclusion or solution to a lot of arable farmers' situations, right?
Well, it is for some people. Dairy and the dairy system is so attractive. We deal with one product, the truck comes and picks it up every day. They deal with it, and we get paid on the 20th of the month following. All of those things. You don't have to worry about filling up your 20 paddocks and all of those things. The other attractive pieces, of course, that the majority of us, or the majority of dairy farmers, have skin in the game in their shareholdings in Fonterra or whoever else they may be supplying. So all of those things are attractive. So it's little wonder. But what I would say about that to some of the people that worry, I would think there'll be arable farmers that'll be looking at putting a dairy unit inside their current arable system.
Yes.
So arable won't be totally lost. And when you look, when you step back and look at the history of Canterbury and a flat land in New Zealand, all of flat land once upon a time was mixed farming. When I say mixed farming, it was growing a whole lot of different things and animals all at once. What's wrong with dairy and arable working side by side inside the boundary of one place? So that's one of the things that I think about. Very sustainable system.
Yes, absolutely, Hamish. Thank you very much for your time, sir, and we look forward to having you in the studio next time. We're going to introduce a new concept called Thirsty Thursday. We think you'd fit quite well into our Thirsty Thursday guest.
Well, we need to get that hurried up
yes.
and get underway with that. Absolutely.
But, yeah, really appreciate it and your time there, Hamish Marr, Methven farmer, arable and dairy farmer. Joining us there to talk about
bit of everything.
Bit of everything. No, very, very.
Keep up the good work.
You too. Absolutely. Thank you.
CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.